Hey there team, welcome back to the channel and welcome to my overview of Farm Together 2. So if you're not across it, I do overviews on this channel. It's where I have a look at the first 2 hours of a game. That's the Steam refund window. Steam says you can make up your mind in that time. I agree. I think as a rule, 20 hours in, you're probably not going to change your mind about how you felt 2 hours in. So short punchy video, broad strokes info, keep it around 10 minutes, and then you can make up your mind on your own. So look, this is an odd one, but at the end of the day, find fun where you can find it. Judgment be damned. I reached out because, you know, this is a new release and it's fairly high profile, but even though I'm very open-minded, I'm not immune to, you know, looking at something and going, oh, well, this is probably a little kid's game or whatever. But that shouldn't deter me, to be honest. I love the Lego games. But anyway, I digress. Self-serious Scarlet nearly slept on this game because of its aesthetic, which, shame on me, I've just dumped 2 hours into this and it's been absolutely fantastic. It's really fun. It's kind of simple, and I talk about this all the time about how developers overreach. They take too big a bite of the pie, too big a piece, and from that they kind of can dilute what should be just fun at its core, very simple mechanics. And this is why things like Vampire Survivors and that blow out, because they get it. And this, similarly, gets it. Obviously it's a sequel. I've never played the first one. From what I understand, they've just built upon that and tweaked it a little bit. I don't really know these guys. Milkstone Studios, they did Ziggurat, which I did cover years ago, and I recall that being pretty cool actually. Fast-paced, first-person, kind of medieval magic roguelike thing. It was cool. It was very different from this, but that was a pivot in and of itself because that sits between the two Farm Together releases, which presumably are what they're more known for. But yeah, look, if you turn your nose up at this, if you look at this and go, oh, maybe not for me, maybe wrong, I'll break it down a little bit. But again, I was pleasantly surprised. I went in with an open mind, of course, and it's one of those things that reminds me this is why I game, this is why I do this job, because finding these odd little games that are off the beaten path are the magic sauce to enjoying your time gaming. So at its core, it throws you straight in. I wouldn't necessarily say the deep end, but you just hit the ground running. Pretty quickly you figure out you can interact with a piece of ground. I'm pretty sure everywhere you go, you just have like a little square around you for the square that you're interacting with. And you can generally just interact with normal dirt and plow it. It's as simple as clicking. The game docks you, I think, $10 because that's how much it costs to plow a field, I guess, and I think you probably get XP. It's one of those things, when you're in the moment, you don't really look at it under a microscope. And then if you interact with said plowed plot of land, it'll pull up the build menu, which you can pull up with a button shortcut Q or whatever it is. And from there you can just pick a crop. You probably only really start out with 1 or 2, so like let's say lettuce. You pick that, you plonk that in the ground and off it goes. Again, it docks you money and you place it. It's not like you have to do seed management or anything like that, so there's infinite availability. All you got to do is labor it into the ground and it docks you the money for doing it. Each thing will have a yield, or rather multiple yields. That is where it gets a little bit more interesting and complex. As far as actual currency, gold, whatever you want to call it, you know, the money that it charged me for digging up the ground and buying the seed, there will be a yield and it will turn a profit. And that money itself is only ever spent, at least so far from my time with it, to reinvest into said produce, right? Whether it's buying chickens or trees or buying more lettuce, that's what money is used for. As far as like going external, like trading at market or whatever, it uses different currencies for that. So it's very interesting. So your lettuce will go in the ground, it'll grow on a timer, and this isn't some pay to win thing. From what I understand, there's no money shop or anything like that, but it is very much timer based, mobile timer based. I mean, maybe this is a mobile game or was a mobile game before. I'm not necessarily against timers as a mechanic. It's just they've been muddied so badly as an intentional time waster to try and bully you into going to a money shop that most people will just see any sort of timer that delays instant gratification as a no-no. I see it as a good opportunity for you to move around and engage with other mechanics, and that's exactly what's going on here. So you put your lettuce in the ground and it might take 10 minutes to grow or something like that, right? So you just leave it. You go and do something else and plonk other things in the ground, that sort of thing, and you just move around and you kind of have this rotation. I would argue timers of some sort are essential in a farming game where it's crop and season based. And that's exactly what's going on here. There are, like, at the end of the day, it changes season, and there are different produce that you can plant at different seasons as you go along. I mean, even thinking about it, it's not overt or explicit, but, you know, Farming Sim 25, that all has timers, you know, it just doesn't say anything. You have to wait for the field to grow. Anyway, what can shorten the timers is by watering plants, and I think they go through water at a rate of twice per harvest. I think it said that. Again, this is a lot of stuff getting thrown at you and figuring it out. Even if it's simple, it's still unusual. But if you walk over a plot of land, it will have a water bar, a water timer, whatever you want to call it. And all you got to do is just interact with it to pour water on it. And you can pour it early, I believe. It'll pop up a warning, like a little thing above its head saying, I'm out of water, it's time to do that. But you can just constantly top them up if you want to min-max, I suppose. But each time you water it, it will cut down on that timer. So getting through lettuce, you know, in a day is actually really easy to do because you water it multiple times and it's got a really short timer. So when you harvest it, again, you just dig up the ground. You'll have to re-plow the dirty soil. And yeah, you'll get your money back. You'll turn slight profit as far as the reinvesting money, which is gold. But you'll also have produce yield, and they sit into subcategories. So in the case of lettuce, you don't get lettuce. You get, I guess, vegetables. And then there's fruit. So there are certain broad categories. So everything has a different timer and a different yield amount and a different, like I said, currency coming out of it. Maybe you could probably min-max a strategy if you're trying to make more gold to get more stuff in the ground. Lettuce might not be the go. Maybe you should be using tomatoes. Likewise, if you're trying to get a better fruit yield or vegetable yield or whatever the bloody hell it is, because these categories are wide and broad, you know, maybe tomatoes are the go, or capsicums or carrots, right? So you'd have to look at the timers and the specific yields as well. But it is fascinating to me that they all sort of go into a generalized bucket. And then at the same time, you have different fruit trees. That's a totally different mechanic. You don't really do much with them other than buy them. They're a very big sunk cost investment, like $150 for the starter apple tree, and they pretty much just drop produce at the beginning of a season, at the beginning of a day. So you don't really manage them or do much with them. They just sit there and they're a long-term investment, but you don't have to rebuy the tree or anything like that. So it's very different from crops. A lot of money for a slow burn investment. And you know, there's livestock as well, and feeding them is much like watering plants. I mean, I've got chooks and you give them grain, and I've got pigs and you give them, you know, the fruit that looks like an eggplant, but it's kind of like a fruit category. And, you know, in turn, they'll truffle up mushrooms and you can sell them. So it's interesting that the produce sits separate from the profit. And then there's a town that you can go into where there's dudes just wandering around with random requests, and that seems to tie into like a friendship currency, which hasn't been used a whole lot yet. But again, it's another thing for consideration. You know, they'll be like, I want to make jam, so give me 5 pears and I'll give you a thumbs up, right? So you do that exchange, so you increase your thumbs up for whatever bloody reason you do that. Then you can also build shops in the town centre, and that's where you trade your produce, and they'll give you these silver stars, which is another currency which is more interested in building out decorative, not really like that, more like non-produce farm stuff. So you can cash that stuff out on fences if you want, and I don't really think there's a functional use for fences other than looking cool. And, you know, part of playing this game is enjoying the aesthetic and leaning into it. But things like paths, which make you move much faster, they're pretty critical as well. And look, I've said all of this and I haven't even mentioned the tractor. The tractor's really cool and interesting. It's essentially a version of you that works in a 3x3 square max, so you can plow fields and refurbish, water, everything en masse. It has a fuel timer that will run out after use, and you can refurb it at the garage in town. I've also got like a fuel tank I've bought but I haven't built yet. Same thing. I haven't run out of fuel, and I've been going non-stop, so you know, it seems pretty generous so far. And you can use that thing to cruise around and do all sorts of stuff. You can move plots pretty easily with the tractor, so you're going to spend most of your time on it. Once you figure out the rhythm, how the game works, how you want to go about it, you're going to be on the tractor pretty much the whole time. And it's got an auto mode as well, where you can just hit shift and it slowly will go down a row. And if you set like a store-bought item, like lettuce for example, if I select lettuce as my currently selected buy, and then I go automate down this row, it'll go down there and it will auto plow, it will auto plant lettuce, it will auto water anything existing. And so, you know, I'm at a stage now where I'm kind of just doing laps up and down in my tractor, watering and refurbing the land as you go. And it's been a really rewarding life cycle from, you know, A to B, figuring out how to just do things manually one plot at a time to riding my tractor and doing it en masse. And it's obviously called Farm Together, and I've obviously played it on my own. People are saying that it's a lot of fun with friends. I could probably see that. It's all very chill and relaxing. So maybe it's one of those, just sit in Discord talking with the lads, cruising around, filling orders. The game will just keep throwing missions at you, and you know, it keeps it a little bit more directed. But yeah, look, it's definitely lighter. There's not a lot of pressure. It's pretty free form, but it's not, you know, off the reins sandbox with nothing to do. At any given time, you're going to have 5 different things that you want to do, and it pulls you in different directions, and you're constantly leveling up and unlocking stuff. And in each of all the trees, the amount of crap that you can unlock and produce for further down is insane. There's pages and pages and pages of stuff. So look, there's a lot of content here, and there's a lot of fun if you're willing to give it a go. And I'm glad I did, and I really would recommend, you know, people do that if their tastes overlap with mine. I'm quite fond of eco, logistics, colony builders, all that sort of stuff, and this sits comfortably in that pedigree, and it holds its own. I think it's a really cool game. It's worth checking out. Anyway, team, might just leave it there for the time being, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.